The Boston Celtics season, in a sense, is heading into overtime. Half of it was good, half of it was bad. What's it going to be from now on? We're going to talk about it right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Boston, baby, we do what you can't. Locked on number 18, Tatum and Brown, J-team. Step back, we gon' wet that and slay teams. Of course the Celtics, who else could it be? Screaming like KG with the Larry O.B. Karalis above average, assessing the team status. Best daily pod, no cap, salary matching. Clutch like Bird the DJ, keep John on replay. Prime time, dapping up the truth on the sideline. Raining J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners. B.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast. Thank you for making the show part of your daily routine and your first listen every day, Monday through Friday. Locked On Celtics is free and available everywhere podcasts exist. You can also get the show on YouTube. Please watch the show on YouTube. Let everybody know that you can subscribe there. Trying to get this up to about 5,000. We're up to 42, almost 4,300 now as far as subscribers. So we can get to the 5,000 mark, hopefully by the end of March. It's March 1st. March 1st. And hopefully we can get that done. Boston Celtics are moving forward with a big stretch coming up. By the way, I'm John Karalis. I cover the team for Boston Sports Journal. I've written a book called Boston Celtics All-Time All-Stars. I was one of the voters on the 75th anniversary team, the Celtics 75th anniversary team. All right, let's bring in our buddy Tom Westerholm. Tom, how's it going, man?
What up?
What up, indeed. The Celtics are up to the 6th seed still, I guess. No, that was terrible.
Nice. Nailed it.
That.
What would you have done if I'd come in with "This is March"? Like the college basketball thing.
We are marching forward in the Celtics schedule. Let's This is
the Second Chance podcast. We're doing all second chances on this one.
Yeah, sure. And I'm not editing that out. Well, why bother?
No,
why bother? We're just gonna plow it, march right through it, if you will.
There it is. All right, now we're back.
There you go. Now we're back on track.
Right.
That first shot, just back rim, it was ugly, it was gross, but I'm dialing it in now.
Yeah.
We'll look ahead later on, and in the second segment, we'll spend a little time looking back at the December that was, and it was still a pretty good February. Missed that second shot, missed that third shot. I'm like Jayson Tatum against the Pacers there. I'm going to end up being 2 for 12 in this one.
It's got to be Rob Williams grabbing offensive rebounds.
There you go. So let's just start there. Pistons, Pacers. I talked a little bit about on the show yesterday. Two teams that are less than good. But look, the Pistons are getting tough, man. And Cade Cunningham is a pretty good basketball player. We just saw them beat the Charlotte Hornets. They're not great, but they are better. And I think we can give Boston like a little bit of a pass on just how that game went. Detroit, I think, physical. Every good team. And if you want to put Celtics as a good team or not, whatever, it's your choice. But every good team seems to have like one of these bad teams. It's a nemesis that just match up. So I'm willing to say that Detroit is, look, they won the game, move on. Pacers game, I'm a little less. I know it was a back-to-back, but I'm still a little more like, that one is a little more of a sour taste. How did you come out of that weekend?
Yeah, I think sour taste is a good summation of it, because it's not something where I think you're running around, everything's on fire, that like this is all burning down. I think Ime basically, kind of alluded to that. He's like, I don't think we're running straight off the cliff or anything like that after a couple of mediocre games. And I think that's perfectly reasonable. I think you look at this, I know they're not great teams, but it's the NBA and you're on the road and you're playing, you're playing road games that are matinees. They're both matinees, like weird timed games. Like neither of those games the Celtics were able to get, anybody able to get into kind of your normal routine throughout the day. And, obviously that's not like to like be making excuses or any of the stupid things that people like to yell at you whenever you try to apply any amount. Yeah, green team or Tom over here. But, I do think that there is I think there's something to the fact that the Pistons were really tough. And I think also Jalen pointed out, you look at that Pacers team, they played so differently than Pacers teams that we've seen, at any time in the last couple of years. Sabonis is gone now. That team was just Miles Turner wasn't even playing. They were just chucking threes, getting up and down the floor super, super fast. Look, the Celtics were on their third game in 4 nights, all road games, second day of a back-to-back, both day games, and the Pacers were just running really fast. It's I'm not trying to excuse the Celtics, but yeah, maybe their three-point defense wasn't quite as good as it could be because maybe their legs were a little more tired trying to get out to guard Buddy Hield or trying to guard O'Shea Brissett. Again, Brissett had, literally a career night, the most threes he's ever made in a game. So I think just a combination of things, I don't think the Celtics played particularly well. I think if you want to have some concerns about their, the small slippage in defense, I'm not going to stop you. I don't think that's completely unreasonable. But I also think there's a lot of mitigating circumstances here that you can look at if you want to look at things positively, right? A sour taste certainly, but I'm not ready to put any stock in this one. If the defense continues to struggle over the next couple of games, then I think you might have a little bit of a problem. But after those two, I'm not going to be concerned about it.
I feel like that's the right place to be. That's kind of where I've landed on this. The weekend was, you grind out a tough win against the team that is playing better than its record shows, and they've got some guys with some fire and some real strength, and okay, fine. And look, the Celtics found a way to win. I think we got that stretch of 9 wins in a row, and they were dominant wins, and that people are like, that's exactly how it's supposed to go. And yeah, that's how it's supposed to go. But how many teams go on dominant streaks like that? There were a lot of things that went right.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, we will watch any game on any given night where a good team against a bad team is, slow or lethargic or whatever. And so, okay, fine. The Pacers game, without Al Horford, and my contention has always been, if they're not fully whole, then there's a real risk of something going wrong for this team.
Yep.
It has to be perfect, and it has to be 100% focus, and it has to be 100% execution every time, or else they risk games like this. And if it's without Al Horford, it changes the substitution pattern. It changes who Grant Williams is playing against. It changes what Grant Williams thinks he has to do. And he wasn't his normal self in this game. So I think any little deviation from fully whole, fully focused puts the Celtics team at risk. It's so wild because when they are fully whole and fully focused, they are great. They really can beat, I think, anybody in the NBA when they're full and focused. It's as simple as that. And when they're neither, or one of those is off by any little bit, it's forget it. It can go awry. It's almost like the sniper, the long distance sniper. You got to get that dialed in perfect. And if you do, and then you can hit your target. But if any little bit of it is off, then maybe you'll hit it, but iffy. So I'm willing. I think the Celtics have earned over January, February, earned the right to be to have that assessment, because we've seen how good they can be.
Yeah. And I think that is one of the things that is a concern about shortening the rotation to this point is that it really does make it so that every cog is so important, because like you said, not having Al Horford makes everything else, so much more complicated. Jayson Tatum gets in foul trouble early, and all of a sudden, things aren't right. And it's just, everything's kind of grinding. The machine doesn't work the way it used to. And everybody's kind of gotten used to the machine working a certain type of way over the last 13 games. It makes it so much easier for everything to break down and stop working. And, that's again, that's what happens when you shorten the rotation. It's like everybody is then very important to the rotation. And yeah, I mean, like if you want to be concerned about this team, be concerned over whether they're going to be healthy for the entire playoff run. Because yeah, if like I don't know that I think they're going to go on much of a run if there's any or like many or any maybe like pieces missing to this machine. Like I think it's really going to matter. But for now, like when we're still a few months away from the playoffs, I'm not going to panic about a couple of mediocre games.
Right. Well, it's interesting. It's a good point about by shortening the rotation. You have now made that, what I was saying before, you've made that absolutely true. Which leads me to a question, and I'm going to have you answer this in a minute. But the question is, have we seen enough of this core playing well this season that the results of this season don't even matter? We'll get to that after I get to BetOnline, which is the place to go for all your latest odds, totals, player performance props, and everything you need. BetOnline.net. Basketball, could be hockey, could be soccer, could be any international sports, baseball, whenever they decide to play again. It's all going to be on BetOnline.net. Scores, podcasts, news, it's all over there. So head on over to the website today. Use your mobile device. Learn about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Please gamble responsibly. Thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Why not make Locked On Now your second listen? Locked On Now is a great recap of the night in the NBA. Each host, after every game, is going to record a couple minutes of reaction. So you get each side reacting after every game. And it's a great way to get caught up on the night in the NBA. Check out Locked On Now wherever you get your podcast and find it on the Locked On NBA YouTube feed. Tom Westerholm, I asked you a question about whether we've seen enough from this core this season to make the rest of the results meaningless in a way. And here's why the reason I asked that. Because this is not the final form of this team. So if they make a run, great. If they lose in the first round, okay. What's the reaction there? Has this run of January, February, when we see, all right, here's Marcus, Jaylen, Jayson, the progress that they've made, Rob, we see what it's supposed to look like. Does the knowledge that, hey, Brad Stevens has to add pieces around it so to make it a true legitimate contender, does that make the rest of the season, in a sense, the results, the wins and losses, does that kind of take away from the relevance of those wins and losses?
I don't think it does, because I think those wins and losses are also going to add to the picture. Because because basically if you look at this stretch as like, okay, this is what the core can do when they're all together and when they're all playing well. If this core, if like it's not completely out of the question that this core went on a hot streak, right? Like they just kind of hit for a while against some bad teams. They kind of corrected from the super mediocrity of the start of the season, but Brad is trying to build a contender, right? So I don't think it's completely impossible that this team hit for a little while and then isn't quite as good as, maybe they looked over that stretch. And then the rest of the games, if they don't look that good the rest of the way, that will inform that. And that will inform like what Brad wants to do over the offseason, or what pieces he wants to add, or what pieces he wants to, kind of mess around with, all of that stuff. So I don't think I don't know that I would say it's, kind of meaningless. Like I know what you're saying. I think there's quite a bit still to be learned about who this team is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it totally does. And of course, like the wins, it's always about style of play anyway. Like,
sure, yeah.
It's and honestly, for me, the rest of the season, like you want to see the wins, because what are you watching sports for, right? Like if you're not watching sports for the wins and losses, then what are you watching for, right? I mean, for us, me and you, it's not necessarily the way it goes, but like for the fan, for the person listening, is like, that's what if you're not going to care about wins and losses, then you can move to Sacramento, I suppose. It's a place where they don't care about wins and losses. But for me, I don't necessarily. I try not to let the wins and losses inform my opinion. Like a loss where they play great is in many ways better than a win where they play like crap. And obviously the win is the win, and that trumps everything. But if you play great and you just lose to a better team, then I'm going to be happy with them playing great, because I think you just play that way moving forward. You're going to win more often than not. And I'm fine with it. Individual wins and losses under the microscope, when you pull back at the end of the season, as long as they're playing great. So moving forward, I just want to see them play great. I just want to see them play a style of basketball like we've seen in that win streak. And are they going to win 9 games in a row every time? No, because there is something to be said about the strength of schedule and some of the things they were able to do against worse teams. A better team's going to be like, nah, you know what? That's not going to be a 28-2 run. But still, as long as they're playing that style, I'm happy. And wherever it goes this season, because I know in the offseason there are going to be changes made. That to me is the more important thing. Just get back to the style, and the wins and losses will fall where they fall, and whatever. This is going to be a weird season.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that you want to see them get back to me, is just the defense, right? Like, again, the Pacers game, I'm willing to chalk. I think maybe more so based on the reactions to some of the stuff I tweeted. I think I'm probably more willing to give them some grace defensively from that game than a lot of people were. But I mean, look, I just that's where I think you want to see them get back to for the rest of this year. You want to know that this team, especially given Ime, especially given, just kind of who he is as a coach, you want to see this team just be truly dominant defensively. I think, it's one of those things where it's like, I think they should be aiming to try to be number 1 in defensive rating. Like, I know you don't want to tie all of your success to stats, because stats can be fickle. No, screw that. Like, if you're a great defensive team, you're pretty good. So I think the Celtics should make it an actual goal to be the number 1 defense in the NBA at the end of this season. If you can do that, I think that you're onto something, because a good defensive team always has a chance, right? And then just because, if you're a good defensive team and Jayson Tatum gets used to the Wilson ball and stops missing all of his 3-pointers next season, all of a sudden you've got a real contender on your hands, because you've got your superstar and you've got, the pieces around him that make sense, and you've got your identity, which is a defensive juggernaut. Be a defensive juggernaut, and I think that this core is what the Celtics need, and they should just stick with it going forward. I kind of think, to your point, I guess, about wins and losses not mattering, I do think that's kind of that ship might have already sailed, and this might be the core going forward anyway, just because Jalen and Jayson are stars, and Rob Williams might be a defensive player of the year someday. But I don't know how much you're going to improve on that necessarily, but I do think that defense needs to be where it's at. Everything else, great, whatever. But if this team proves that it can continue to defend, maybe not at the level where they're giving up 90 points per 100 possessions, but if you can keep it in that 101 area, that 100, that's going to make you the number 1 defense in the NBA. Geez, yeah, great, do that.
that's where you're right. That's where it's at. So in November, December, the defensive rating was 107.5, which was good for 7th.
Yep.
And then from January 1st, January and February, it's 102.3, which is the best in the NBA. But then it's 101.4 just in February alone, which is first in the NBA. So that the progression there is where you want it to be. And net rating overall was 1.9, because they had the 17th. They were middle of pack offense in November, December. Then that net rating grows to 11.7, and they're first in defensive rating, like I said, from January, February, the next 2 months. They're first in defense, 9th in offense, with a 113.9 offensive rating and 11.7 net rating. The offensive rating jumps to 116.5. So the offensive rating has jumped over 7 points from from the first 2 full months to the second 2 full months. The net rating is now at 15.1 in February. And they were first and ninth in defense and offense. So first in defense, top 10 offense. That's going to get you far. That's going to get you far.
That's a contender. Yeah.
The assist percentage is the big one.
Right.
Assist percentage.
Real quick, before you do the assist percentage, that did bring to mind that Ime quote from earlier that I thought was really interesting, where he said that like the offense picking up a little bit kind of convinced them all to try harder on defense.
Yeah.
It just kind of reminded me of that one. I thought that was kind of funny.
It's like, I mean, everybody wants to score. Everybody wants to
everybody wants a bucket.
You know? And you gotta, like, if you defend, you get more buckets. It's like giving it an allowance. Like, if you wash my car, you'll get money. Like, oh, okay. The assist percentage, and this is a function, I think, of the defense, but was 57.5% in the first 2 months of the season, November and December. That's 23rd in the NBA. Since January 1st, 62.3%. That's good for 11th over the past 2 months. And then just in February alone, 65%, 6th in the NBA. So that assist percentage has skyrocketed. They have other stats that are like, they need to rebound better. They're still a middle of the pack rebounding team. They're still pretty low. Their free throw rate, middle of the pack in February, but it's still very low in general. And their turnover percentage is not great, middle of the pack, middle to lower. So they need to take care of the ball more. But moving the ball and playing defense, like we look at the stats of the turnaround versus the slog of the first couple of months. Defense has gone way up. Like defense is like out of control. The offense is responding and they're moving the ball. Their assist percentage has just flown through the roof in February. So that's the formula. And it just goes back to what I said before. Defend your asses off, move the ball. And I counted probably, I think 4 or 5 times in Indy, Jayson Tatum getting the ball and stopping, when in prior games he was getting the ball and just ripping and either getting to the rim or drawing the crowd and kicking it. The more I rewatched that game, I'm more willing to chalk that up to like Tatum was not playing his normal. I don't know if it was the foul trouble. You know, playing with 2 fouls, it affects his defense, but it affects his offense because he doesn't want to get an offensive foul.
Yep.
So he's just going to rely on jump shots. Put that on top of the back-to-back and the 3 games in 4 nights. I think they were a crappy Jayson Tatum game. Oh, you know, that's kind of what led to the Pacers thing. So I think generally speaking, the team stylistically has progressed to a point where we want it to be. Now, can they keep it up?
Yeah, I mean that's the long and the short of it, right? Like that, you know, and like they're not. And then I think it's not so much are they going to keep it up? It's to what extent do they regress, right? Like because they're not going to continue to have a 15 net rating. Like, hater. Green team or hater, Karalis, and also Twitter. Which one is it? You tell me.
It can be both. It just depends on the segment.
Right.
It depends on where on the YouTube video people check in, because they only watch that 5 minutes. They're like, well, that Tom Westerholm, he's a hater, man. Why do you hate the Celtics so much? Do you even like basketball, man? Do you even watch?
Then you get to the next part, and you're like, does Tom Westerholm have a Celtics tattoo on his ass? What's going on
there? What are you, Brad Stevens burner account? What are you? All right, so that's a great place to leave this and ask the question: to what level will they regress, or will they at all? We'll look forward when we come back. First, let me tell you about Rock Auto. You know, there are a lot of cars out there, lots of makes and models. It is absolutely impossible for that little chain store in that strip mall to have everything every single one of these cars needs. So go to Rock Auto, because they have an extensive catalog with all of the parts that all of these cars and trucks and SUVs and everything needs at great prices, a ton of different price points. And no matter how complicated, no matter how simple, Do you need something that is going to fix your engine? I don't know what that is, but if you know what it is, Rock Auto knows what it is, and they're going to give it to you at a really, really good price. If you need something simple, like I know how to change wipers and change headlights and stuff like that, but I can get that at Rock Auto at a good price too. They're a family-owned business that's been serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Don't bother paying 30 to 50 to 100% more for these same parts at a chain store or a dealership. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck, right? Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box. That's how they know we sent you. It's an amazing selection. Reliably low prices. All the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. All right, Tom, the Celtics had 2 bad months. They've got 2 good months. So as I said in the cold open, we're now heading into overtime. We've got 2 good quarters, 2 bad quarters. Now we're getting into the overtime part of the schedule. It's March and April. And we're going to see what team are they really? Are they going to go back to some of the mistakes that we saw in the like the Pacers game? Was that a regression? Am I wrong to kind of chalk that up? Or are we going to see them? What level of slippage are we going to see? This is what we're going to see as the Celtics take on the Atlanta Hawks on Tuesday night, the Memphis Grizzlies on Thursday, Brooklyn, and who knows if Kevin Durant's going to play in that game. But between that and Charlotte and one more game against Detroit for good measure, there's Dallas, Golden State, Sacramento. Like there are some tough games that are coming up.
There are. I don't know why you slipped Sacramento in there real quick, but
it was the last one on that when I was going through that week.
Yeah, there are a lot of tough games coming up, and I mean, like the Celtics have the 4th toughest schedule, according to opponent winning percentage going forward the rest of the way, and this stretch is the reason why, right? Like, so these next couple of weeks are, I think, going to tell us a whole lot about who the Celtics are, what we can expect from them, when the postseason rolls around. And yeah, I mean, to your point about it being overtime, it's funny because, the team at the start of the year was so bad. The team since has been so good. This last couple of games have been so mid that I just feel like like you said, we don't really know much at this point. Like, we know who the Celtics can be. We on the good end, we know who they can be on the bad end. And now we're going to see, like, when things get serious, when you're facing John Morant and you've got to try to stop him, and when you're facing Trae Young, when you're facing Steph and the Warriors, when you're facing all these teams, like, this is just going to tell us a lot I think about what to expect from this group for the rest of the year, and certainly into the postseason.
I think looking at the stats, one more stat. Looking back at this might be the one stat that explains everything. In November, December, their true shooting percentage was 55.3, and that was 21st in the NBA. In February, 59.5 and 6th in the NBA. Shots falling changes everything for this team. And the true shooting involves all like 3-pointers and free throws for people who don't know. But that's telling of not just the 3-pointers falling, but getting to the rim, finishing at the rim, drawing the free throws, shooting your free throws at a good percent. This is everything. The Celtics shooting, and we knew it was a problem coming into the season, shooting has been a lot better recently. And of course, when they shoot like crap against Indy, and Tatum is 2 for 12, and Marcus Smart hits his first 3-pointer in that Indy game. And I look at everything, I'm like, wow, Marcus Smart shooting 40% since January 1st. And then he misses 6 in a row. And you're like, God damn it. but poor shooting, struggle, shoot well. And that's just the most basic NBA analysis that you're going to get.
Well, and it's funny because for a long time, it felt like the difference was just, is Jayson Tatum shooting well? Like, for a while, there was that stretch where it was like his good games and bad games really defined a lot of things. And then the Celtics found ways to win, and Tatum found ways to be really good even when he was shooting poorly. And I think that was a huge difference during that 9-game win streak, was like Tatum looked like a superstar even though his three-point shooting pretty much stayed the same or was even a little bit worse in a lot of those games. It's not like he rattled off one of his patented like monster stretches that he's had in previous seasons. He was just kind of the same Jayson Tatum has been all year, except as a shooter, except that he was, like you mentioned earlier, grabbing and ripping through and trying to drive to the lane and kicking out and doing all the things that when Tatum does them, he is Jayson Tatum. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. I think a lot of it just comes down to that, and a lot of the Celtics, the Celtics shooting spiking is helped by Jayson Tatum driving and kicking and finding shooters. And even if Tatum doesn't get the assist, the next guy, Tatum getting the hockey assist because, his pass led to somebody rotating above the break, which leads to finding Grant in the corner, et cetera, et cetera. Like, all the stuff that we've seen a lot this year. So, yeah, I think a lot of it's going to come down to Tatum playing the right way. Not Tatum, rattling off like a stretch where he's shooting 40% or 45% from three. Just Tatum playing the right way, being a star the way he was over the 9-game stretch. That's going to matter quite a bit.
Ultimately, it'll come down to the team's best player playing well. That's basically it. It's just basically it.
Typing hot takes from Tom underscore over here.
But to be fair, it's not just Tatum playing well, like you said, but it's Tatum playing the way that Ime Udoka has been pushing him to play.
Exactly.
And that is a huge development. I think there is a strong possibility that when we look back at Tatum's career, that this season could be seen as a pivotal one for him, because this is the one where Ime challenged him. Ime comes in and says, we need you to be different. Whereas Brad Stevens is Mr. Soar with your strengths, which is a perfectly fine strategy. And you just find other people to do this other stuff. But Ime is like, no, we need to give you new strengths. And to Tatum's credit, he accepted that coaching and is developing that game. And there's still a lot more for him to learn and grow into. But again, you go back to the Pacers game and say, well, Tatum didn't play the right way. He, for whatever reason, was settling a lot. And again, there goes the Celtics offense just kind of like struggling a bit and not able to score and get past a 7-point deficit. So yeah, it's Tatum continuing to take these lessons that Ime has been preaching and build on those. And I think one thing we can just expect is every once in a while, guys are just going to fall back into bad habits for whatever reason, whether you're tired or whatever. You're just going to fall back into your worst habits, and that's just something we're going to have to deal with moving forward.
Remember when Ime was trying to get him to post up a bunch earlier this season?
Yeah. You're running a lot through the post.
Yeah. It makes me wonder if Ime really wanted to hammer home to Tatum, like, no, it's going to be a little different this year. I know last year you were allowed to do all your like sidesteppy three, all that stuff, all that cutesy stuff. But no, with me, even if it's not as efficient, I demand that you try to bounce some people off you. Like, I wonder if that was kind of, a little bit of the messaging there.
A very like Mr. Miyagi wax on, wax off, where there's a dual purpose of like, no, that's really a blocking technique in karate. And like, no, this is going to show you how to like play through people.
Yeah.
Post up. It's you playing through people. Now, okay, like a month later, it's like, okay, that post up stuff, do that, except while dribbling towards the rim.
It's either that or Tatum just embraced shooting out of the post ups a little too much. And like Ime was like, that's not what I meant. All right, let's try this. All right.
I don't know, man. I think there's just room to try a lot of things. And I like to see Tatum like work out of the post sometimes. It's a great way to operate. And especially like in a game like the Pacers game, take it into the post. And I don't want to sound like Charles Barkley, all crazy old school, but there is room for post play in the NBA. Take it into the post and see if you can't back a guy down. And that's a great way to get the ball into the paint without having to drive through. Just post the guy up, run it. So you take a couple dribbles and then collapse the defense a little bit and see if you can't spray it a little bit from there. So I don't know. Maybe we'll see it again. Maybe that's something that they're saving, make people forget that they did it, and they're just saving it for the playoffs.
So,
on the Cleveland Cavaliers.
He had one post play earlier this year. I don't remember when it was. I think I tweeted it, but he backed a guy down, and it just literally looked like, somebody doing like a finger roll on a Nerf hoop because he was so much taller than the guy, and he literally just reached over top of him and kind of dumped it into the basket. He's huge. Like if you're Tatum and you want to post some smaller guys up, I'm like you. I'm not a post up freak like you. I'm all about it.
I am very fond of post play, but I always had fun with post play. It's like a little dance down there. Tatum is just so huge, man. Tatum has worked really hard to grow into that is exactly what you want a basketball player to be. Yeah, he's just the right, the purport. Everything is just man. And he is wide. You're surprised at how. I think Mike Gorman used to say that about Pierce. People are always surprised about how wide his shoulders are. Tatum is a big dude. I feel like he's 6'10" or something.
I will not hear an argument that he is not 6'10".
You and I, him standing next to Kevin Garnett and Kevin McHale, and he was their side. And I know he's standing up on a little bit of a riser there if you look at it, but he's not that far. He's there. He's next to the big men. He's next to Robert Parrish. He's not smaller than Robert. He's a tiny bit smaller than Robert Parrish. He is 6'10".
You and I have stood next to a lot of NBA players. We know when a guy is like Grant Williams was not 6'8" or 6'7" coming into the draft. That man is is he taller than you? I don't.
Yeah, we're close. We're close.
Your guys are pretty close. He's not close. Taller than me. I'm 6'3".
Yeah.
Tatum towers over everyone. He's so tall. He's a big dude.
Yeah, he's a big dude, which makes it ridiculous that he's listed as a guard on anything. But anyway,
he would agree.
Let's wrap that up there. So, first of all, thanks for Tom coming on as usual. Tom making fairly regular appearances now on the Locked On Celtics podcast. It's always great. Tom, friend of mine, thanks for coming on. We will be back after the Hawks game. The Celtics have Hawks and Grizzlies this week, so this is the Tuesday show. Wednesday show will be post-game Hawks. Thursday show will bring Tom back to spin yarns, and then we'll be back to wrap up the post-Memphis, hopefully after a second win. So that's a 5-day-a-week schedule, Monday through Friday, free podcast, daily podcast that you can get wherever you get your podcast. It is also on YouTube, so you can subscribe there as well. For those of you who haven't subscribed, or for those of you who have, I should say, I would really appreciate you sharing the podcast. I know some of you have said you've posted it into Facebook groups and all of that. I really do appreciate that. Thank you so much for that. If you haven't done anything like that, I would love it if you did. Share the podcast. Tell your friends, tell everybody that they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network.